Welcome to the Athlete Climate Academy, where we speak to athletes, scientists, and communicators about the important conversations that we need to have about the climate crisis. We've got such a good guest for you today. Francesco Puppi is a renowned distance runner celebrated for his podium finishes in international races. But beyond his athletic prowess, Francesco is a passionate advocate for the environment, actively contributing to sustainability initiatives, and his commitment to both running and environmental causes makes him an inspiring figure in the global running community and to us here at the Athlete Climate Academy. Francesco, welcome to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Not a problem at all. It's something that we've been trying to get some chats in together. We saw each other down in Chamonix quite recently around UTMB. So I'm really excited that we get to talk on the Athlete Climate Academy podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited as well.
So tell us, a lot of people will know who you are in the trail running community, but hopefully our audience is a little bit broader than that, stretching to the outdoor world in general. So tell us a bit about yourself as a trail runner, but also as a person too.
Yeah. So I'm Francesco. I'm from Italy. I'm 31 years old. I live basically on the south side of the Alps, near Como Lake, which is a great playground for outdoor sports and trail running. And I was just reflecting on the fact that I'm a pro athlete, but I had never imagined that my life could turn this way. It wasn't among my goals to become a professional athlete. And of course, when I was young, I wasn't talented enough to have any good results or anything. So it came as something, it came later on when I was maybe 25, 26 years old. The opportunity came, and here I am now. And I feel privileged to do this job, but I know the work behind being a pro athlete and running at such a high level. So that's me from an athletic standpoint. I don't think it's very interesting to list my achievements, but I do want to mention that besides running, I'm also a physics graduate. I went to the University of Milan, and I'm very passionate about science and physics. And I think that thanks to this background and education, I've developed a great interest in everything related to nature, science, physics, of course, climate change. And now that I'm running, the issues that have to do with environmental science and just the places where I run, mountain environments, but like any landscape that I'm lucky enough to, where I practice my sport, I'm deeply interested in. So that's me.
One of the things that I think doing a science degree or working in a place where science happens, I think the thing that it teaches you best is how science works. That it's not, science isn't a knowledge. The way we teach science in schools now is that we learn things, like we learn the order of the planets, for example. But that's not science. That's what science has found out. And what science actually is how did we learn the order of the planets? How do you go about finding out which planet is inside of Earth as it orbits the sun and which side is outside? So it's the how. And I think that, when you do a physics degree, when you learn the how we do science, and you can apply that to almost anything, including like sports science and, trail running, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I like to see it more as a process rather than mere knowledge, and just the frame of mind that you can apply to different fields when it comes to, for example, problem solving. But even my approach to running has been greatly influenced by my academic background and the fact that I'm a physicist. So yeah, it's something that I'm aware of, and I think it's been important in shaping my personality and interest. And I can probably understand a little more about science than the average person because I understand the language of science and mathematics and all that. So yeah, I do agree with what you just said.
So that's a lovely mix of, professional trail running and science. Do you think that's one of the reasons that you wanted to merge your passion for trail running and climate advocacy together?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the reasons. It came like as a natural consequence of my approach to running and just life in general, because I don't think that climate advocacy should be confined to just my life as a runner, as an athlete. Of course, it has much broader impacts and it concerns every aspect of my life. But yeah, first of all, I've always been interested in nature, environmental science, and of course physics. And second, I've always been passionate about telling stories and not like advocating for, but like just caring, showing people that I care about some issues and maybe inspire people through that. It's not like I'm doing anything to teach people or like tell people what they should do, what they should think, what they should learn, but I'm just being transparent and authentic about telling my own story from an athletic perspective, but also like from an environmental perspective, because it's something that I deeply care about and that I am as a person.
And it is also super interesting, like climate science in general and how we go about finding out, even like I sometimes it grinds my gears a little bit when people talk about the weather and like, oh, weather people, they can't even predict what the weather's going to be like in 2 days' time. And I'm like, do you know how difficult it is to predict the future? Like, it's really difficult, and we've got better at it over time. So now a 5 day forecast is better than it was 20 years ago. But it's so complicated to do that, and it's really interesting to me how climate science stitches all these different fields together into one thing. So I think like climate advocacy, to me, as well as being important, is quite interesting because you find out about all these different fields that you had no idea. Even like from a scientist looking back in towards like politics, like I didn't have any idea about politics until I started getting into climate advocacy, because you learn how things work, why it's so difficult to get climate things passed,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. So are there any like things you've learned across the years, any projects that you've done that are specifically like super interesting to you or things that you're really proud of?
Yeah, I was thinking that in general, you learn about how complex things actually are. Like you were talking about, the weather, and the atmosphere is a complex system that is so difficult to study. And like I know something about the mathematic models behind, the weather forecast or just predicting how the climate evolves. And of course, weather and climate are two different things, but one is complexity and the fact that you really need to go deep into a very small field of science to contribute to that knowledge and study and progress. And then, like, at a surface level, just thinking about how science and especially climate science affects our lives is something that I'm very passionate about, because it's probably one of the biggest challenges of our species, of humanity. So, like, I don't know, it's just impossible for me not to care. And I've understood that it's not just at a scientific level, but it's very political, for example. So I've learned more about politics and how politics works at a national level, but also at a global level. How different organizations, such as I don't know, Protect Our Winters or just other organizations pushing for climate solutions and climate advocacy work, and basically like how this whole world is interconnected and how we are, like how many people are contributing to the same thing.
Yeah, and having these dedicated organizations. Protect Our Winters is a great example. Athlete Climate Academy was set up to be a brand that specifically talks about climate. It's there in the name. But what I love is how much other organizations, because not everyone wants climate front and center in the name, but like pro trail runner organizations and all these other organizations are starting to weave it into their process and to make it one of the top 3 things at least that they think and make decisions about. Like I think the pro trail running community and the Trail Runners Association is just really good at doing that.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely one of the 4 pillars on which we built the association. So yeah, we were chatting before this episode that the outdoor community is definitely showing a big interest and some care about these topics. And it's not to make ourselves feel better about who we are and what we do, but it's because it's true. And I'm really glad that our community and an association that I've contributed to found, like the Pro Trail Runners Association, have climate issue and just the environmental issue among their priorities. So to me, that's very important.
I think that's where it needs to be. Like climate solutions. Okay, we can have organizations that their entire goal is to change how the way we see the climate crisis, but everyone needs to find the people, their community, the people that they want to talk to, or that they're part of. For us, that's trail runners and the outdoor community in general. For other people, it's going to be the crochet community, or it's going to be a board game community that they go to every Friday night, or they play Dungeons and Dragons. And how do you weave in the climate change to Dungeons and Dragons on a Friday or a Wednesday night? Those are the conversations
exactly,
we need to be having.
It needs to become a topic of our conversations, a dinner topic, as we were saying. And I'm glad that it's becoming this way. And it's not like, okay, just because we want to label ourselves as, climate activists or people that care about the climate issues just because it's popular, it's cool, it's one of the issues of our modern world. It's because it does need to enter every aspect of our lives if we really want to address this huge issue.
And how is it, talking about how it impacts our lives, how is it consciously and subconsciously, do you think, affected your life as a trail runner? Are there things that you seek out to do differently? Have you changed your diet, changed the way you get to races, chosen which races you will and won't do? How has it affected your life?
Yeah, it has definitely a lot on how I choose races. I do try to pay a lot of attention about how I plan my races and my calendar. And like, since flying has so much impact, one of the easiest way to reduce my environmental footprint is just to fly less. And I have to balance that with my goals and needs as a pro athlete, of course. So I don't think the solution is not flying at all, but like think about how much you're flying and ask yourself, is it really necessary to go to this race? Can I combine maybe a couple of races in a single trip? Can I stay in the location where I'm going to longer because I can, do more things and just do a race and go home? Those are questions that I always ask myself. And then, as I mentioned, it's not a topic that concerns just the way we do our sport, but it concerns every aspect of our lives. So like from where I put my money to, what type of food I eat, I always try to pay attention. Of course, I'm aware that, for example, banks have like where you put your money can contribute to finance the oil industry. So, a few years ago, I chose a bank that was only doing investments in like green energy and not in fossil fuels, for example. I'm trying to be mindful about the way I eat. I'm not strictly vegetarian, but I would say I'm mainly vegetarian. That's just an example. And I'm aware that as an athlete, as a public person, I'm also an example for other people. So I want and I can use my platform to advocate for change and not tell people what they should do or like directly encourage people to do better, be better, because it just creates more pressure, which I don't like. But by just showing my example of the fact that I care, I think it inspires other people to care as well. And this all goes in the right direction. And this is at an individual level. It's important to understand that it's a challenge that we need to address both from an individual level and from a global level. So like the way we vote makes a difference. Like every individual action has adds up a little bit to this issue, but it's important to zoom out a little bit and understand that like we're not the problem. Like if we're flying to a race, that's okay. Like we don't need to blame ourselves or call ourselves like climate hypocrite because we're flying to a race or we're traveling by car instead of choosing public transport. Of course, which we should try to choose public transport whenever possible, but it's not always possible. So it's always like a compromise and a balance between what's good and what's not. It's important not to pretend to be perfect, as we also mentioned. So like by showing people that there is a middle way, I think it encourages people to take action, because if you set the standard too high, nobody's gonna do anything and nothing changes. So this is what I can say.
The way I get around the finance aspect and put in money where it might go towards subsidizing fossil fuels is I just have no money. That's the way the economy works really, really, really well to make sure I don't have any money, so I can't contribute to fossil fuel industry. But on the, this, go on.
Yeah, sure. Another thing that I wanted to mention, since I'm a pro athlete and I'm sponsored by a big brand, I think as a pro runner, also as a community, as part of the community of pro athletes, it's important to show, like to push brands to change, to demand better conditions, better processes, and it's that can be very impactful. Like if you're showing your sponsor that you care about the environmental issue, and if more and more athletes are that way, they are probably encouraged to change and do things differently, which I think is also important.
Yeah, I think that the brands get a lot out of the athletes giving back like that. Athletes know what people care about when they're out on the trail, when they're out there in the outdoors, and I think brands see that they actually benefit from caring more about the climate, knowing where the materials come from, knowing what impact that they have on the environment. I think it's just better for brands to be climate forward and not climate backwards, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. It's important to also make sure that they're not greenwashing, like the fact that they care about the environment are not just claims, but that they're actually doing something. But again, as athletes, we have some influence, at least. I'm not saying a big influence, but yeah, we are a part of this ecosystem, and we should be the ones who are pushing for better.
So, talking about pushing for better, how do we see a better world in terms of, let's say, take trail races, for example? You know, traveling around to them, the impact that they have on local environments when they happen, especially if they're really big trails races. Um, how do we see a better future? What should they be doing that's better? Some quick fixes, I suppose, but then some longer, more difficult fixes.
Sure. Yeah, that's an interesting question, which concerns many topics, I think. One is about the athletes competing in these races, like mainly how they travel to these races. And of course, if an event is very big and has a lot of athletes who are coming from different parts of the world, that has a big impact. So, like, on an individual level, of course, being mindful about how you travel and yeah, maybe try to limit your travels to the competitions is a good idea. And then from an organization standpoint, like make sure there are environmental policies in place. And with the Pro Trail Runners Association, for example, we've created an environmental boundary document for all race organizers with a list of points and things that I should care and try to respect, from, I don't know, like avoid flying helicopters to film the races, for example, because it's definitely not necessary. You can use drones, you can use camera runners and mountain bikes to film a trail race, for example. To, like, for example, who they partner with, the brands that they partner with can have a big impact on the environment. And we've all seen what's happened with the UTMB World Series, for example. That has drawn a lot of criticism from the trail community when they partnered with Dacia, who has become their title sponsor. Not everybody was happy about it, of course, and of course we should be concerned about it. And I don't think it's just for the partnership itself, but it's for the message that we're sending to the outdoor industry, but also to a broader audience that sees that Dacia is associated with trail running and UTMB, like with an environment that it has generally a very high environmental awareness, and the fact that Dacia is getting benefit from all that. Is it really the direction that we want to go towards? It's an open question, but I think it's important to consider all these aspects.
Yeah, and it's important, when considering who to partner with. I suppose the obvious ones is no to like fossil fuel industries. Like, probably
Exactly.
shouldn't. I can't imagine a scenario where you go, actually, I should probably partner with those. But then carbon intense brands, I suppose, that like car companies that use a lot of fuel, but also the tires put out a lot of pollution as well. the conversation just needs to be had. And I think that the conversation around UTMB and the partnership with Dacia, from all the trail runners that I saw and everyone involved with UTMB, they saw it as, it was so heartwarming to me. And I was at UTMB for the first time this year, um, to watch it. All the athletes I spoke to, it really came across that the criticisms they had were because they love the sport and they love UTMB and what it's done for trail racing, and they love being in the outdoors, and all those things make you want to protect it, not like rip it down. Like no one's
Yes.
criticizing the partnership because it's because they want to come at it from a bad point of view. It's because you guys want to make the world a better the better place, and trail running a better community.
Yeah, exactly. Like the race and the trail community is definitely getting benefit from the partnership for the fact that, it's more money, it's contributing to its growth. It's not like we necessarily want growth, but we're still like a very small sport compared to, other mainstream sports, cycling, soccer, and so on. But yeah, like, is this really the direction that we want to go towards? It's not like as trail runners, we're different from other people. After all, we're just a mirror for our society. So we don't need to pretend that we're any better than anyone else. But since we are in this peculiar situation where the sport is growing, we get to decide what direction we can grow towards. So I think people are just demanding from an organization like UTMB to be better because they know they can be better because of what they've done for the sport. And here is where I think we can make a difference. And by advocating for change, we can have an impact. So according to me, it was important that a lot of people took a position and spoke up about this issue.
And just had that conversation is so important for us to
Yeah.
talk about this and be open and be transparent, because it cements our values or changes them. And looking forward, whether that's from a race point of view or from athletes, when it comes to climate advocacy, what would you hope to see in the future for trail runners to be doing more or races to be doing more in terms of how we talk about our climate and the advocacy that we do toward it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Sometimes it feels like there is a category of athletes who care about the climate issue, and then other people who don't really care, or maybe they're not showing it in public because like not everyone is maybe active on social media or has a broad impact on their audience or their community, and not everyone has to be that way, of course. But as we mentioned, I just wished that this issue was more like a central topic of our discussions. It needs to enter any aspect of our activity as athletes, basically, like from, I don't know, brand relationship to how we travel to races, to where we go, for training camps or just to train on a daily basis. By showing people that we care, and it's not like showing, the public, our fans, our audience, that we're any different than what we actually are. Like it's just being authentic, just letting people know that we care about it. I think it's I would like to see more of that, because in the end, I think there is a good environmental awareness. It's maybe never enough, as you said, but we're probably going in the right direction.
And I think that's probably all we can hope for, pushing as fast as we can in the right direction. And you're such a good role model for doing that, both in your trail running and in your climate advocacy. Francesco Puppi is an amazing ultra runner and environmental advocate. Francesco, thanks so much for coming on the Athlete Climate Academy podcast.
Thank you very much.